Brooke Thiele. My maiden name is Brooke Swelstead. I realized early on that art was a way to express myself, and I was praised for it. And I think in a family of 4 kids, you know, if you get praised for something, you gravitate towards that. So I've always enjoyed art and the making of art. And I went to college for an art degree and then just continued with that. But my main focus is animation. I really enjoy animation. Of course, I like watching it a lot too, but yeah, I just like the time-based storytelling and way you can manipulate whole worlds and people and characters, and it's a lot of fun. And it can be very serious. It really depends on how you look at things. But animation can really be anything you can imagine, so I do like animation a lot. My current family is my husband, Andy, and my daughter, Ren, and we live in Milwaukee, in the suburb, sort of, I guess, south side. We live in the south side of Milwaukee in Bayview. I like hanging out with my daughter. She's really funny. I think it's because we started her education on puns very early. We're constantly being silly like that. And I could probably do anything with her and hang out and have fun. If she's feeling motivated to be with me and be creative, we get to do little art projects. Last night we did Fimo clay, and we made tiny little furniture, and I showed her how to make a roll of a design and then make it really small. She thought that was really cool. So that's a lot of fun to do those projects with her, because she is really creative and very different from me. She is a coordinator, so she's kind of ordering me around a lot, but it's a lot of fun. My parents had a friend that was Korean that worked with Holt, the adoption agency that I was adopted from. And she tried to look up some information. She couldn't find any. My mother berated the adoption agency for more information, and what she got was a response that was, my parents were too young to have kids, so they had to give me up for adoption. So I grew up with a foster mom, which is, I believe I was the last child that she took in. Her husband was part of the military, and so he was away a lot. So, but yeah, I guess she did a really great job with me. On the plane ride home, I was happy at first, and then after a while I started to look for her, and I could never find her. And then when I was at my house in Green Bay, I would just walk around going, "Amma, Amma," you know, like looking for her. So, which is, my mom said was like healthy, or people said that that was a healthy thing. When I was presented with the whole group, because my father went, my mother stayed home with my brothers. Apparently he was super excited because I was the best one. I think he was saying like the most lively. And my mom was super excited to have a daughter finally. But because I didn't have a male figure, I think my dad was like new and interesting, but every time I looked at my adopted mom, I would cry. So I think her expectations got shattered pretty quickly. And she brings that up still. Every time you looked at your father, you would just smile, and then you'd look at me and you'd cry. Well, sorry, it's 9 months, I don't know. I don't think I thought about my race for quite a while growing up. I think maybe a little bit in kindergarten, just because I was there for a short amount of time with a lot of different kids and one of the families was Asian, but not Korean. So that like I couldn't quite figure out where I fit in, like I looked like them, but they ate fried rice, and like it just in my head, I couldn't put it together. And then later on, when our schools started to mix at certain events, I think that's really where it hit home more, because kids that didn't grow up with me, suddenly I was seeing them and they saw me for the first time and they'd never seen an Asian before. So, you know, that's when I started getting hazed or like made fun of. It's hard to pull apart where racism and adoption, specifically Korean, are like pulled apart, because I grew up in an area that was very white. And I was the only Asian within the school district for, I think up until maybe 93, when the Hmong population started to come into Green Bay. I think when high school hit and we started to integrate a lot more with other kids, that's when being adopted was highlighted more. But again, it's more racism than it is per se adoption. Although my brother did go to school at the time, and I was always hoping that he would like stick up for me, and he didn't. But my older brother did, and he wasn't even in school. Like, he knew some people that were there. And my brothers are all different. Some of them are more protective than others growing up. And I think it's just their awareness of the world and, you know, where they stand in the family, and they're got their own problems. But my brothers are 4 years older than me, 7 and 8. So it's you know, between my oldest brother and I, it's a relatively large gap. So we talk, but not much. But my middle brother and I, we have very similar personalities, so we talk quite a bit. And then my youngest older brother, we talk a little bit. Without getting into too much detail, I did not have a positive experience with my adopted family. And that really affected me personally, and I became the black sheep of the family. So I think in my high school years, that really was where it came out a lot, where I had lost a lot of friends in my freshman year. So I started to not go to school and not do homework, and just would do extracurricular things with people that with the new friends that I made. And yeah, I was never doing anything illicit though. I think it was just like I didn't want to be home. So that really hurt my relationship with my family. I mean, I think they thought the worst. I became suicidal in high school, and I was committed to a psych ward. And in that time, my parents got involved, and they didn't really understand what I was going through. And it had nothing to do with me being adopted. It had to do with things that happened within my adoption. And I don't like the idea that people think that adoptees have like a maladjustment because, oh, you're sad you didn't grow up with Korean families, or, you know, like, and it has nothing to do with that a lot of the time. But I mean, a lot of the interviews that I've seen with Korean adoptees never really touch on all the negative statistics of adoption, specifically international adoptions, which directly relates to Korean adoption. You know, they talk about these rosy family reconnections and things like that, which is really positive and it's really good to look at, but nobody really talks about any of the other stuff that happens, and it happens on a higher statistic with Korean adoptions than it would, say, a domestic adoption. So that really frustrates me. I hated high school. I know that I did stuff in high school with people and acted like I was involved. I was a cheerleader for a year. I was on the diving team. I went to state. I was on student council until I got kicked off for toilet papering. And so I did all these things that kids are supposed to do when they're adjusted kids, but I hated high school. For sure, freedom, yeah, to be on my own and not have to deal with my family and not have to deal with my friends or anything. I think I just wanted to like detach, for sure. I think my college years were like a time bomb waiting to happen. And so, you know, you go to high school, you finish, and then you go to college. And I feel like now even that's like this robotic sort of thing that people do. But the courses that were offered at the college I ended up going to, I would get A's on all my art courses and then fail everything else because I just didn't go. And so that got me on academic probation really quickly. And the art that I wanted to do, animation, wasn't even offered at the school. But I didn't have the grades in high school to get into an art school that had an animation program. After a while, I dropped out, and then I got back in, and I would do the same thing, get A's in all my art courses, and then fail everything else. And dropped out again, and I got a cake decorating degree here in Chicago at Wilton School, thinking I would do that, but I ended up going back to school and finally transferred to the Art Institute here in Chicago. But I didn't deal with any emotional stuff through high school, so I don't know why suddenly it would just go away in college. So, you know, it just kept piling on emotionally and being suppressed and, you know, bursting out in different ways. Yeah. So maybe it's a good thing I didn't get freedom, because being in college, you do have freedom, and I definitely explore drugs and alcohol and things, like really negative things, which didn't help. I feel like I definitely have changed since my college years. It's a long time ago. And it's, I guess I'm always changing, but those major things in my life have come to a really good resolution. Absolutely, there's a huge difference if I had been their birth child. But because I wasn't, like, it was an obvious choice to not trust me or not, yeah. Yes. And even now, like, as far as being adopted now, my mom always says things like, well, you know, it's because of the good genes or something like that. They always make those comments. And it's like, aha, you know, funny. But it's like always reminding me, because she doesn't want to boast about her kids, but it's okay with me because she's not boasting about like blood, so it's okay. So it's like a little like, all right. So I'm like constantly reminded I'm adopted with my family. After I was went to the psych ward, they said that we should probably have like family therapy. And it was said like, we don't need that. We'll just all sit around the table and talk. And that never happened, obviously. So like a kind of emotional relationship would have helped, but I don't have that now. So I just, and then my brothers had a lot of support with my parents financially. And I'm not saying I was deprived of anything per se. I just, there are things that I was hoping that they would, there are ways that I was hoping they would help me financially growing up that I didn't see was equal. And that was frustrating. So I guess them being a bit more equal, but their idea was probably that I'm, you know, just gonna spend money on drugs, or I'm just gonna, you know, like do these negative things because that's what they assumed. But just for them to trust me and to be positive with supporting me would have been nice. But they have now. So that's, you know, I guess I had to wait 40 years for them to come around and help them, which is super nice, super helpful. When I graduated college, I went to Korea, and I went to the Adoptee conference in 2004. I did go to the hospital that I was born in. The Korean family that we knew growing up, he was a doctor in Korea, and so he knew someone that worked at the hospital, and they showed me the place where I was maybe housed because there's been renovations at the hospital. So, you know, but it was interesting. I was relatively old when I went because it took so long for me to graduate college. And being an adoptee was very awkward because I spoke a little bit of Korean, but not just enough to like ask where the bus is or something, and most of it was pre-written, and I was probably murdering everything I was saying, but I could like point to things that I had written down. I never really have had a huge want to find my birth parents. My mom has pressured me more, like she's more interested than I am. But when I went, it wasn't easy. I feel like now there's goal, and you could go there and they could, you know, help you more. But at the time, you really just signed your paperwork on the Holt end, saying like, if for any chance your parents are interested in finding you, you know, like your end is like okay now. And that's like as far as they go. So I had done that, but like, I don't know, I think aren't private investigators like illegal and stuff like that? So, I mean, I just really feel like that was a dead end. So, I am not connected with my birth family at all. Although I guess maybe they're pretty young, so I have some time, I don't know. I have had cataract surgery already on both of my eyes, so hopefully one of them's not blind. But yeah, I think it would be interesting. I don't assume that it's going to be rosy in any way, just because I've heard so many stories about how it's not what people expect. So I've had enough family issues in my life. I don't really know if I want to open a whole nother bag of that, but I mean, if it happens, cool. We'll take it as it comes, but Like again, I've done my part. I think if I lived in Korea and it was easier, I would definitely maybe do a bit more, put a little bit more effort into it. But being in the States, and if I went there, I'd maybe get a month total to try and do something. And I don't have a lot of connections, so I don't know how far that would go. I think a lot of questions about family come from, I question whether or not it's from adoption or just regular family problems. I'm working through those questions in my artwork. I have, and I'm going to be working on an animation about the uniquely slanted adventures of the Korean adoptee, and kind of a Daria meets some kind of experimental animation, just to tell that story. Yeah, I think whatever subconscious things I'm working through in my adoption just come out in my artwork. I think that adoption and my upbringing have made my values focus a lot of empathy out to my community, more of a personal, very personal community. So the students that I have, I think are my main focus, letting them have a positive education experience, because I know I had such a hard time in college, and it would have been nice to have supportive teachers that completely understand, like, life is out there to get you sometimes, and to have somebody there to help in whatever way, it would have been nice. So I just try and be empathetic towards others.